It's me again, Robert Hale, 75 years old, sitting in the same chair I always sit in, the one by the window that gets the afternoon light. Alina picked it out years ago. I never had much opinion about furniture. She always did. I've been sitting here for a while now, trying to decide whether to start talking or just let the quiet be quiet for once. But there's something that's been pressing on me. The kind of thing that doesn't let you alone until you say it out loud. And at my age, you stop waiting for the right moment. You start to understand that the right moment was probably 10 years ago and the next best thing is now. So here I am, again. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. One of those places where the rules weren't posted anywhere but everybody knew them by heart. The men worked. The men didn't speak too much about the interior of things. You kept yourself presentable, you kept things moving. And whatever was happening underneath, whatever was actually happening inside you, you folded it up and put it somewhere it wouldn't get in the way. My father was not a cruel man. I want to be clear about that. He wasn't cold on purpose. He was just sealed, like something had been shut in him so long ago that he'd stopped noticing the lock. He sat at the head of the table every evening. He passed the bread. He asked about school in a tone that didn't really expect an answer. He provided. He showed up, and I watched him. The way boys watch their fathers when they're trying to figure out what kind of man they're supposed to become. I studied him without knowing I was studying him. By 12, I had already started practicing the face. The one that said I'm fine, nothing to see here, keep moving. The one that kept the surface smooth and everyone comfortable. The one I would, it turns out, wear for the next 60-some years without ever taking it off long enough to remember there was another one underneath it. I married Alina when I was 28. She was 25. She had this laugh that I can still hear if I sit quietly enough. It filled a room from the corners first, like light does. She laughed at small things other people walked past. A dog looking at you with complete seriousness. A weatherman apologizing for rain like it was personally his fault. She saw things other people didn't see. She saw me in ways I didn't know how to let happen. In those early years, she would ask me real questions, not the surface kind. The kind that sat with you after dinner, after the dishes, after the lights went out. She'd ask what I actually wanted, not from the week, not from work, from being alive, from having a life. And every single time I would redirect. A joke, a practical concern, something that needed doing, something that kept us safely on the surface where I knew how to stand. She'd look at me for just a moment longer than felt comfortable, and then she'd let it go. I told myself that was her understanding me. That she knew I wasn't built for that kind of conversation and she was respecting it. I told myself that for years. I understand now that she was just tired. That she had been reaching towards something in me and kept finding a wall where a door should have been. And eventually, the way people do, she stopped reaching quite as far. We had 2 sons, Daniel and Paul. Good men now. Daniel's 51, Paul's 48. They have their own families, their own ways of carrying things. I wonder sometimes how much of what they carry I handed them without knowing. Daniel was a sensitive boy. Not weak, I want to say that right, not soft in the way people use that word to mean something lesser. He felt things deeply and didn't always know where to put them. He'd come to me sometimes, not with words exactly, just with a kind of hovering. The way children hover when they need something they don't have the language for yet. I remember one evening when he was about 9 or 10. He'd had some trouble with a friend at school. The kind of hurt that is enormous at that age, even if it looks small from the outside. He came and sat next to me on the back porch steps and didn't say anything, just sat there. And I said, "You'll be all right, bud. These things work themselves out." And I patted him on the back, twice, firmly, like I was confirming something official. And he nodded, and we sat there for another minute or two. And then he got up and went back inside. I thought I had handled it. I didn't understand what I had missed. I didn't understand that he didn't need to be told it would be okay. He needed someone to sit in the not okay with him for a little while, to stay there without rushing him through it. He needed to feel like his feelings were real enough for another person to remain still inside of them. I gave him a pat on the back and the sound of something closing, and I did it again. 100 more times in 100 more moments because it was the only way I knew. The work was easier. 31 years in civil engineering, bridges mostly, infrastructure. Things that had to hold weight had to be calculated correctly, had to either work or not work. There was no ambiguity in it. I was good at it, better than good if I'm being honest. I had a reputation for being steady, for being the one you called when something couldn't afford to fail. I was useful. And I had built, without quite realizing it, an entire sense of myself around being useful, around being the structure that held things up. The face I wore at work was the same face I wore at home, just pointed in different directions. Capable, contained, reliable. For a long time that felt like enough. It felt like character. Like something to be proud of. I didn't understand yet that it was armor. And that armor, worn long enough and never taken off, stops feeling like something you put on. It starts feeling like skin. Alina was diagnosed with early Parkinson's when she was 63. We had been married 35 years by then. The first year was manageable, adjustments, medication. We adapted. I became very organized about her care without being asked, because organizing was something I knew how to do with my hands and my mind. I made charts. Actual printed charts, laminated on the refrigerator. Medication schedules, appointment calendars, fall prevention reminders. She would look at those charts with an expression I couldn't quite name. Not grateful, not ungrateful, something more complicated than either. One evening, a Tuesday, nothing significant, just a plain evening. She was sitting at the kitchen table, and I was going through the next week's schedule. Talking through what needed to happen when. And she reached out and put her hand over mine. I stopped talking. She said, "Robert, I don't need a schedule right now." I said, "I know, I just want to make sure she said, "I need you to just sit here with me." And I did. I put the papers down. I sat there. But I didn't know how to just sit there. I was still inside my head, running through contingencies, ticking through the list. She was holding my hand, and I was somewhere behind my own eyes managing things that didn't need managing in that moment. Present in body, nowhere close in anything that mattered more. She knew it. I could tell by the way her hand eventually softened, and she turned to look out the window instead of at me. That moment has been with me for 12 years. I carry it the way you carry something you can't put down and can't repair. Just the weight of it, sitting in the chest always. Alina passed 6 years ago. I'm not going to spend long on those final months because they belong to her, not to a recording. What I will say is that I was there, physically present for all of it. I held her hand. I slept in the chair beside her bed in those last weeks. I did not leave. And yet, there is a version of being there that is still just showing up in your armor, still being the capable one. Still managing the thing rather than inhabiting it. And I think, with whatever clarity comes at this age, that I was still doing some of that in those final months. Not because I was absent. Because I still didn't fully know how to open the jar. She died on a February morning. Gray light through the curtains. I had been awake most of the night. When it happened, I sat with her for a long time before I called anyone. Just the two of us in that room, the way it had been at the very beginning before the boys, before the years piled up the way they do. And for the first time in longer than I could measure, I didn't try to manage what was moving through me. I just let it be there. It was the most present I had ever been with her. And she was already gone. There's a particular cruelty to understanding things too late. I don't say that with drama. I say it as a plain observation, the kind you can only make from a certain distance. Understanding has a timing problem. It tends to arrive after the moments where it could have changed the shape of things. I kept thinking, in the years after she passed, that if I had only known sooner, if someone had told me earlier what I was doing and what it was costing. But you can be told a thing and still not no asterisk it. Knowing something true about yourself requires something to give way first, and I spent 60 years making certain nothing gave way. I see Daniel a few times a year now. He calls more than that. He has made in his 40s an effort I didn't make at his age. He asks me real questions when we talk, the kind a leaner used to ask, and I answer them now. Not gracefully, not with the ease of a man who worked this all out in time to do something useful with it, with the slow, unpracticed honesty of someone learning a language very late in life. My accent is still wrong. I stumble over certain words, but I try, and I think he knows I'm trying, and that seems to matter to him. Last spring he came and stayed for a long weekend. Just the two of us. We sat on the porch in the evenings and talked the way we never did when he was growing up, about what it felt like to be him as a boy, about what it felt like to be me. He told me something I've thought about nearly every day since. He said, "Dad, I spent a lot of years trying to figure out what was wrong with me, why I could never quite get through to you. I thought I wasn't enough of something, not tough enough or interesting enough or I don't know what." He paused. And then he said, "It took me until my 40s to understand you were somewhere behind glass. You could see us. We just couldn't reach you. Behind glass." I sat with that for a long time that evening. I'm still sitting with it, because he wasn't wrong. And he wasn't angry when he said it. That was the thing that stayed with me most. He said it the quiet way true things get said when enough years have gone by and the wound has become just a fact. He was telling me something plainly, without trying to hurt me with it. And I think that was the moment something in me finally gave way just a little, just enough. I'm 75. The knees are unreliable. Sleep is shallow and honest in a way it wasn't before. I tire in the late afternoon in a way that feels different from tiredness at 50, heavier, more matter of fact. The body stops lying to you eventually. It just tells you what's so. There are things I know now. The face I wore for so long was not strength. I told myself it was. I arranged my whole sense of myself around that story. But strength would have meant being able to put the face down when the people I loved needed me to. What I wore was something closer to fear, I think. Fear that if I stopped managing it, if I sat inside something uncertain or painful without immediately trying to fix it or move through it, something would break. That I would break. I was wrong about what breaking meant. I thought it meant failing. I understand now it just means being human in front of another person. It means letting them see the interior of things. It means being findable. I spent most of my life being reliable in ways that didn't reach anyone. I built things that held weight, real, necessary things. I'm not ashamed of that work. But I didn't know, for most of my years, how to hold the weight of another person in the quieter way they sometimes needed, with stillness, with staying, with not rushing toward the fix. Paul and I have something different than what Daniel and I have. Paul carries more of me in him, quieter, more private, not quick to open things up. We talk on the phone regularly now. Sometimes for an hour, not covering anything urgent, just being in the same sound together for a while. I've come to understand that's not nothing. I've come to understand that love most of the time is not the large moments. It's the ordinary repeated small ones. The Tuesday phone calls, the porch evenings, the sitting without an agenda. I missed a great many Tuesdays over the years, but I'm here for the ones that are left. I think about a leaner often, not always with grief, or not only with grief. With something that sits closer to gratitude mixed with a sadness I don't have the right word for. She loved me when I was sealed shut. She tried for many years to find the way in. And she stopped trying quite so hard eventually. Not because she stopped loving me, but because she had her own life to live inside of ours, and she was a person too, with only so much reaching in her. I understand that now. I don't punish myself for it the way I used to. You can only be reached by someone if you are, in some way, reachable. I was not reachable for most of it. I think I am more reachable now. It's a quiet, late thing, but it's real. The house is the right size for a different life than the one I'm living in it now, quieter than it used to be. But I sit on the porch in the evenings and I let what's there be there. Not always, not perfectly. I still revert sometimes, still feel the pull of the old arrangement, the managed face, the smoothed-over surface. Old habits are stubborn, especially the ones you spent decades mistaking for character. But I keep practicing. 75 years old, practicing something I could have started at 25. That's just the truth of it, no dressing it up. There's one more thing I want to leave here, not as advice, not as any kind of lesson. Just as something I noticed, finally, about my own life. The way you notice things when time has gotten shorter and you're less interested in pretending. The face I wore, the capable one, the held-together one, the one that didn't need anything and never showed the seams. It cost more than I could see while I was wearing it. Not in dramatic ways. In the quiet accumulation of moments that could have been something genuinely close between me and the people I loved, and were instead just managed, handled, fine. And the people I loved paid part of that cost without anyone asking whether they were willing. That's what stays with me, not what I didn't let myself feel. What they didn't get to feel from me. If you've sat with this all the way to the end, I don't have anything to hand you. No summary, no takeaway. I'm just an old man in a chair by the window, saying out loud what took most of a lifetime to find the words for. Maybe there's some company in that. Maybe knowing someone else has sat in the quiet of an evening, turning the years over. Asking whether they were close enough to the people they loved often enough and honestly enough. Maybe that's worth something. I hope it is. It's me, Robert Hale, 75 years old. And I think that's all I had to say today. If something in here landed with you, even just one small moment, you're welcome to leave it in the comments. No need to explain it. Just say what you need to say. Sometimes that's enough.